Good afternoon, Farah.
Hey David, how's it going?
Great, thanks. Thank you for coming today. It's great to have you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It feels really surreal actually to be in this position, but I'm very excited to share more.
Well, you're the first person coming to us from outer space. So,
Yeah, that is true.
yeah, let's see
You're
how
in the
where this
galaxy.
let's see where this conversation is going to take us. Shoot, what is it? Shoot for the moon, end up amongst the stars.
Yeah, and end up in the galaxy, it seems. Yeah.
Let's do that. Let's give it a try. So, for anyone listening, to introduce you, Farah Morgan is the Grad Coach. So, Farah is a graduate careers coach and mentor with the tagline, helping ambitious grads to launch the well-paid, inspiring careers that they deserve. She covers both the psychological and practical sides of the graduate job hunt so that clients can get noticed and hired in record time into career paths that they love. So, with no further ado, I'm going to pass the mic to you, Farah. Can you tell us about the work that you do as the Grad Coach?
Yeah, 100%. So I basically relaunched myself as the grad coach back in June 2022. So we're a little over 2 years now, which is very exciting. I've worked with now over 120 grads or finalists. They might be in their last year at university. And equally, grad is a huge umbrella term. Sometimes they're fresh grads, other times they've been out of uni for sometimes 7, 8 years, but they still sort of see themselves in that graduate space. And yeah, I've worked with that many people one-to-one, but an increasing number through online workshops, webinars, masterclasses, and I've started to do digital product and launch my own community as well. And yeah, as it says on the tin, I'm very passionate about helping finalists and grads just nail it when it comes to their employability. I feel like there is unfortunately a lot of misinformation or just a lack of information consistently across universities about what it actually takes in 2024 or otherwise to be noticed and hired. I think the culture, there is a lot of university careers services where I'm not here to judge at all, but I think there's just a real range of access to information or even support. And it can lead to a lot of common sort of, I don't know, things that need to be myth busted essentially about what it actually takes. For example, I'll give you one really quick example. There's still a presiding narrative that to be successful out of uni, you should have got a first class degree from a Russell Group uni. So therefore, if you don't have both those things, you're kind of screwed in the market. And we just know that's not true. So I'm very keen to help finalists and grads across all different degree backgrounds, all different sectors that they want to aspire to get into, to prove otherwise, that they're more than their degrees. Yes, it's one piece of the puzzle, but there's so much more to it. And really building up those skills, not just for their first job, but for the next 10 years of their career.
Thanks, Farah. I'm definitely in our conversation today really keen to, really delve into what, challenges and obstacles that grads are facing, and to, some of your hints and tips on what might help them alongside your, in the experience of your coaching in that area. But I'd love to hear, the story of, where did the grad coach come from?
Yeah, great question. So I guess I can answer it in two halves. The first half actually comes from my own graduate career. So I had a really unique way of coming out of uni because I did a theatre and performance degree of all things, so really quite random. And then I went into a business management grad scheme. So I very quickly went from being a graduate myself to being a graduate employer. So I would run interviews, assessment centres, I'd vet people's cover letters and CVs, ironically only being a year or above them, that sort of thing. So I had a lot of responsibility from day one. So I was that hiring manager that was making real world decisions about who we were going to hire and who we weren't. So I learned really quickly what it actually takes to be noticed and hired in those kind of graduate settings. So that was sort of the origin background of it. But really the reason why I then became the grad coach was because I learned over time that I did need to most likely find a niche to position myself within the coaching space. And I had great mentorship from people around me. And they were basically saying, you need to have some level of authority where you feel like you've been there, you've done it to an extent. And so you can build trust and you can empathize with the audience that you want to target. So that's why I then went back and leveraged what I did in my early career to think, yeah, actually, I know a fair amount about this. And I actually have a real soft spot for that sort of age group, university years. So I would really, really love to work with them on their skills, their confidence, their knowledge to really unlock their careers.
Thanks, Farah. And how do you blend then being a coach in sort of the traditional definition of coaching, and then also bringing all of your knowledge and experience in sort of recruitment and yeah, how do you blend the two? Because I know a lot of people I speak to are kind of a coach and a mentor. Is your style of coaching sort of like coaching blended with mentoring or?
Definitely, yeah. So that is a caveat I want to say, because obviously some of you who will be watching this are getting ready to, or maybe you're part of Animas already. So you're doing your accredited coaching program, and it's very much about, you are not the expert, through listening and reflecting back as opposed to giving concrete advice. But yeah, the way I would describe it is that I am definitely a coach and mentor, and my clients are aware of that. We have a very dynamic relationship, but it's within the context of a coaching philosophy. So even if, for example, a client comes to me and says, I need really practical advice to nail this interview. I've got one coming up next week. We're going to prep it together. I'm always going to come from the position of, well, tell me what you know first and what's your gut telling you, to really exhaust and draw out what the client knows before I then add any expertise on top. And I think that can be really meaningful for that particular age group as well, because like we were saying off camera, I think graduates severely underestimate what they do know and believe to be true about being a standout candidate and navigating their way through their early career. And quite often they will quite instantly seek to get just advice from somebody else. So just supporting them to be their own counsel with a little sprinkling of extra expertise is a really uplifting and empowering way to go about things.
Thanks, Farah. I know we spoke earlier about before the call. We spoke about the ways in which we underestimate ourselves and things like the importance of great communication skills, and who really gets hired. So yeah, I'd love to just dive into I'd love to dive into the topic of grads and that whole minefield of applying for jobs after university. If we may,
Yeah.
What is it that leads to actually getting that job and getting hired after university?
Oh, great question. There's so many things that I could share. I mean, I guess it comes back to what you was, I think, starting to say there about it's not the best candidate that gets hired. It is always the best communicator. And the same, I would argue, is true for the coaching industry. It's not the best coach that gets hired. It's the best marketer, the best communicator. So it is sort of recognizing that as a graduate or even as a coach, it's one thing to, well, arguably grads don't even fully know their own skills and value that they have to offer. So that's sort of one piece to it. But even if they did know these things, similar to an aspiring coach, it's then your duty and your mission to then effectively communicate that to the target audience. For graduates, it's the dream companies they want to work for, but for coaches, it's going to be our prospective clients. But the same philosophy is true. So yeah, I mean, there's so much more I could sort of unpack in terms of what we mean by being a great communicator, but I think that philosophy is a really, really important place to start.
Okay, thanks, Farah. And then so if I came to you as a fresh grad and was saying, oh, I'm really struggling, know where to get a job, don't know where to start, and all I hear is that there's way more grads than jobs, so I'm really deterred by it. Like, where would we start?
Yeah, I think we would figure out firstly, where do you want to be, and reverse engineer what needs to happen, whether it be objectively, i.e. maybe there are genuine gaps in the CV that need to be filled and we can strategically figure that out, or if it's more of a subjective thing of, like you actually have everything on paper, but just somehow you believe that you're not worthy for that role, you just can't compete. I noticed you mentioned a bit of a belief there of there's more grads than there are jobs. I actually don't think that's true, looking at the data. So I think it's figuring out where they need to be in terms of what do they aspire to, in terms of the sector, in terms of the actual job title. For example, I often say to clients, if I could give you your dream job tomorrow, what would that be and why? What would it mean to you to have a role like that? And sometimes they have really clear-cut ideas, sometimes not. But even just one thing of, I don't know what it is, but I know that I have to work with people. I'm very extroverted, or, I feel like I can't be in an office speaking to no one. That's great information that we can carve out together, a bit of an inspiring career vision for them. But yeah, if you don't have a target, it's very difficult to work out the underpinning strategy. So we would definitely start there.
Right. Is it sort of a bit like starting in the future as though you've got that dream job and then working backwards, or?
Sometimes, yeah. I've actually done that with clients before where we've imagined that they have got the job and I'm almost interviewing them saying, oh, what does it feel like to get the job? What did you have to change in order to become this person that was hired? And it's really interesting what intuitively they bring up out of that conversation. But at other times it can just be more in the present that we're talking it through.
And then to flip the question on its head, when you were in your previous career, I think you said you were a hiring manager.
Yeah.
What were you looking for to kind of differentiate between candidates and to get the best person for the job? What was it? What was it you were looking for?
I think, especially in the early career space, what can make a huge difference is the quality of the interaction that person is able to have with me. So often I would give a lot of clues as to, I won't buy. I would crack a couple of jokes here and there. I'd be really warm and personable. I'd use their name a lot just to make really clear that I'm here to get the best out of you and build actually some great rapport. So it would always be very interesting to see if that person was confident enough to take the bait and mirror back what I was giving them. And this is for the context of the type of role I was hiring for. So we were looking for assistant managers. It was very extroverted role. There was a lot of sales involved. There was, we were looking for future leaders. And so we did need to see those interpersonal qualities quite quickly to see if they'd be able to cope with the training program that they would undergo. So I think that one is huge. A second thing I would say is how well researched they were, because in the absence of direct experience, you can always outwork your competition in terms of how much you know. And interestingly, I actually never had this as a hiring manager. I can only tell you, in fact, I can't even remember anyone ever reaching out to me on LinkedIn to say, hey, I understand that you work at this company. I'm looking to work here too. Like, any advice, or would you be happy to jump on a call? That's something I recommend all the time to my clients, and they get amazing intel from people in these companies. But yeah, also just people who can speak to people who are in the roles, even ballpark, even in the sector. I think they then come to interviews and come to assessment centers with a much more nuanced understanding of, right, this is what the role probably will entail, and therefore this is where I can fit in, and these are my strengths that I can bring to the table. So it's small things that do add up in the grand scheme of things, I would say.
Thanks, Farah. What if they are to go back sort of to myself when I was sort of that, grad sort of age, going for jobs and being really nervous about going for interviews and seeing things on job descriptions like strong interpersonal skills, strong communication skills, and thinking, I don't know if I have them. How do I demonstrate them? What are they? Don't really understand. I'm really nervous about this interview. What would you say to that?
I think it depends on the person. I think most people have done a lot of communicating and a lot of interpersonal stuff without even realizing, because that is what it is to be just a human being, essentially. I mean, because I work with graduates, it's quite easy to then ask them, okay, so walk me through what you've done in the last 3 years of your degree. We talk about projects, we talk about dissertations, we talk about extracurricular, and before you know it, I'm then reflecting back just many examples where not only have they done those skills, but they've actually excelled as a result of them. So I think this is what I was saying before we started today. I am trying to act as a very well enhanced mirror, so they can actually look at what they've done and see it in a more real light of, oh yeah, no, I am a good communicator, because otherwise I wouldn't have been able to collaborate in a team of 10 working at Tesco in a busy Christmas period, or I wouldn't have been able to run a society as president and have a team of 20 doing various events and socials. Do you know what I mean? It's that sort of thing. But sometimes it does, I think perhaps with that age group, being able to give some external validation of, no, you have done this stuff. And actually, I can see you've done really well as a direct result of it. Claim that, own that, tell people about that. That can be the final thing that really cements it in graduates' minds, on average, I would say.
I love what you're saying. The power of coaching And thank you for sharing that, by the way. I just love that you kind of turn the spotlight back on your client, and it's everything about, you really sort of showing them what they're capable of, their strengths, their abilities, and their achievements, and kind of celebrating that with them, and saying, you're showing them that they are so much more capable than they thought they were, and that, a lot of their limiting beliefs are just that kind of beliefs and old stories that they're telling themselves, but they're not necessarily true anymore. They're not necessarily facts. They're just kind of an old story that might not stand up anymore. Yeah, I know that through myself applying for jobs, going for interviews, I've definitely encountered a lot of that sort of that very negative internal dialogue and self-talk. And then I also wanted to ask you, if if that person, so you've had that coaching session with them, and then they're thinking, right, so where do we start with CVs, cover letters, job applications? I understand that you also, alongside as well, in addition to your coaching, you then support them with all of that process as well.
Yeah, 100%. Because I one of my mentors said this, and I'll never forget it, that you can't coach over a knowledge gap. And it's just so important that on a practical level, graduates also do know what excellent looks like in terms of a CV, a well-written cover letter, and really just every stage of the recruitment process. So yeah, we need good psychology, but practicality to come alongside it as well. So yeah, it's a really common session that we do where I will go through their entire CV with them. I'll get them to sort of tell me stories of, what was a week in your life like in that role, or what were some of your proudest moments, or what were the most difficult parts of that role, from which I can sort of gather, right, okay, so you can actually write this as a killer bullet point. And I'm very pro on, let's bring out the statistics and those quantifiable results, because this is the way of business. Basically every single grad, whether it's finance, design, market, everything comes back to being cohesive in the business world, and business needs results. So the more results driven they can be in the master copy of their CV, in what they're using in their cover letter, the more compelling they are as a candidate. But again, that's a huge transformation for a lot of my clients. They don't see their work in anywhere close to statistics and results, but we have to come up with appropriate ways to reframe it. And it doesn't look like over exaggerating. I think that's a huge thing that graduates worry about, but what if I'm going to be perceived as overselling myself? But the irony is typically they're severely underselling themselves. So when you actually bump it up a little bit, they're just sort of correctly getting it right in the level of sort of assertiveness and confidence that they need to have. So yeah, they don't have to lie. We just have to bring out the right stories and frame them powerfully as statistics, not just as numbers, including numbers, not just words.
Thanks, Farah. I'm curious, are you someone who works with templates and specific formats of cover letters, CVs, job applications, or are you someone who is it like custom and bespoke per candidate, per sector? Because you see things online that talk about the perfect CV, and
which I get frustrated about.
You could ask AI how to build the perfect CV.
Yeah,
it might be a standard format, but it might not necessarily fit an artist or someone in the performing arts, as well as it might fit an accountant or a lawyer.
Yeah, 100%. And there is no perfect CV out there. And it's a huge thing that you might see on LinkedIn of, download this ATS friendly CV and you'll be hired. But ATS, I won't bore you too much with it, but it's a lot more complicated than that. But yes, to answer your question, I do have templates and I do have a methodology that I will teach to basically all of my clients. I have mini courses that they can watch. I've got sort of like previously hired graduate examples so they can see it in practice. So there's a lot of sort of backdrop resources that I give on top of just the one-to-one sessions. So yeah, the reason why I have templates and certain methodologies that I teach is because it works. Looking at the data of over now 120 clients that I've worked with, they've used these certain frameworks and they've kept to these sort of rough paragraphs and it works. So I wouldn't ever advocate for a particular template or approach if I didn't have the data to underpin it, essentially.
I see. It's interesting. You were mentioning, some of the success stories. I was reading one of your case study testimonials before the call. Someone had described you, Farah, as one of the best mentors she'd ever had. Said that she'd had that you provided invaluable insights from the start that improved my confidence when it came to asserting myself. And together with a fantastic CV, cover letter, and powerful job applications, she bagged her dream job. But
Yeah, I know who you're referring to.
congratulations.
That's the lovely Keris. Yeah. Yeah. You know what? Keris is a really, I'm sure she won't mind me saying, she's a very, very excellent example of the average graduate that I love in particular working with. She's a law grad, but she came to me thinking, I've got nothing. I literally remember her saying, I don't have anything on my CV. But the nothing was actually her doing a year abroad in America, working in multiple jobs and just ingratiating herself in a completely different culture for a whole year at age 19. She had done part-time work. She was then on the cusp of starting to reach out to people and try to get law experience, even just shadow work. So we massively ramped that up and she got 2 more sort of mini opportunities from there. But yeah, this was an amazing example of how when you change your mindset and you give people clarity of, oh yeah, no, I do have all these things I can offer, it can just open up the floodgates in terms of the nature of the roles they go for and how senior they are as well. I mean, again, I don't think she'll mind saying she's now in a 38k traineeship. And before that, I don't think she'd ever made more than 500 quid a month in a part-time job. So just an amazing win. And it is truly a role that she deserves because it does reflect her potential. And it just took a little bit of support for her to see that so that she could put herself out there.
Well, huge kudos to your client and huge kudos to her coach. Sounds like it was a team effort there. And I can personally relate to that very much as someone who took a year abroad and went traveling around the world on my own backpacking. And people said to me before things like, but what are you going to put on your CV? Are you going to just put like unemployed or something? And then someone else, probably more like yourself, said, how about you just put that you've been, traveling around the world for a year. It's a career break, and then break down all the skills that you learn through solo traveling and the resourcefulness. I mean, there's so much you learn and gain from having a year away. But it's interesting how different people, maybe people who haven't done it and people who have done it, just have a completely different view and opinion of it.
Yeah.
I
think what I'd add to that as well is I mean, it comes back to coaching as well as, holding your client in positive regard. But I feel like I'm that on steroids when I work with clients, because no matter what they've done, I feel like I can always bring a positive out of it. And that is always the mentality to have. But again, graduates, I don't know why, but there seems to be this culture of doing the complete opposite. So you reminded me, I had another client called Beth who had been traveling in Australia for 5 years, which is huge. I mean, number one, love that for her, an amazing opportunity, but also how exciting in terms of she'd worked in multiple industries, because the way it works in Australia when she was there, you had to rotate every 6 months. So she'd had 10 different employers in all these different sectors and industries, but she was ironically seeing it as a huge negative. And it really took multiple sessions for her to break down her belief that that was an inherently negative thing, that she'd been away and she got a huge gap in her CV. But yeah, within 10 weeks of us working together, she got her first role in the civil service. And then I recently caught up with her about a month ago, and she's then got a formal grad scheme, which was sort of long game, what she wanted to go for in local government. And if only I could tell her 18 months ago, you're going to achieve all these things, not just in spite of the fact that you went traveling, but because of the fact that you went traveling, I think she would have fallen down and thought I was completely, messing with her. But it is, that glass half full mentality of anything you've done in my books, any experience can be put into a positive skill or result or way that makes you valuable, but you've got to see it in that way.
Oh, wow. Talk about being the right person for the job.
Thank you. I really, really enjoy it. It's really, really nice to help people see their greatness.
Thanks, Farah. So in order to get to this position of being able to make such a difference in people's lives really quickly as well, what are some of the sort of the obstacles and challenges that you faced on that journey and of becoming, self-employed as well?
Yeah, sure. Shall I stick in terms of just being self-employed or even just like challenges in my own career?
Yeah. So, I mean, so a lot of people listening to this podcast might have been, either considering or are currently studying for, the coaching diploma, and are thinking of setting up their own practice, and are thinking, wow, look at what Farah's done. I'd love to do that. And we've covered some of the success stories, and I'm just wondering what hurdles have you sort of encountered along the way, and how have you overcome some of those?
Yeah, of course. And I'm really happy to share very transparently, because I feel like there's not enough of these stories out there where people are really honest and open about things like how much money they're making, and also it not be where I'm a business coach trying to get them to work with me so that I can help them grow their business. I'm one of you guys. I'm just like a fellow coach that just happens to have a business that's profitable. But yeah, definitely. So I think the first biggest lesson that I had to learn was pretty quickly after graduating and, getting my diploma, which was you need a sustainable way to get clients. So when I first started, I didn't have a niche, and I quite liked actually not having a niche. I remember coaching someone as young as 16 years old and someone as old as I think about 65 approximately, and a whole host of people in the middle with all different challenges and things they were bringing. But that wasn't sustainable on a business side, because how I got to that point was I would do free coaching sessions for an hour long, and just with the hope that they would then want to come along and do a second session. And I really distinctly remember I did like loads of promo on socials. I mean, I feel like I'm quite extroverted on socials anyway. So that even alone would probably be quite daunting for some people to do. And I totally get why. But I just had no shame and be like, hey guys, I want to speak to anyone and everyone, just booking for these free calls. And I remember I had 22 people sign up, which was incredible, but I only had 3 clients out of it. So that was a huge, input in terms of my time, my energy, and the hope behind it. And yes, great that I got 3 clients. But in my head, I was thinking, well, these clients are going to be, possibly finishing soonish. Do I do another 22 hours of free coaching? Like, how is that actually going to work? And that's when I realized, no, I'm not willing to do that. There must be a more strategic way out there. So that's when I did my research, and I looked into getting I did a marketing program with the Coaching Revolution, and that was absolutely transformative. I cannot tell you the return on, or I can tell you literally the return on investment. But yeah, at the time it was really quite scary, because I was thinking, well, I don't have any money because I'm an unsuccessful coach at the moment, financially at least. I think I was doing all right with my clients, but financially I didn't have a lot to show for it. But I'm so pleased I took that risk. And I think that really relates back to anyone who's watching this, who are either considering doing Animas or even halfway through. Just know you're doing the right thing. You have to invest in yourself. And yeah, sometimes that does look like putting down some scary money and just seeing off the back of it. But I think having skin in the game makes you so much better. It makes you accountable, and then you actually have to change and do something with the knowledge that you're gaining. So yeah, that was definitely a huge thing. So another huge challenge was figuring out what should my niche be, therefore, because that was sort of what the marketing program was encouraging me to do. I almost went in another direction. I thought about, maybe because I'd been a young manager, I thought perhaps, okay, that could be a niche where I work with people outside of their work to help them be better managers in their work. But I thought that was a little bit messy. I thought graduate just made a bit more sense. And then kind of the rest was history. But I won't lie. I mean, I'll tell you really transparently. So I've literally got the numbers here. In my first year of coaching, I was self-employed with a couple of other businesses and ways that I was making money. But I only made $5,000 from coaching, just literally from the last quarter of the year, when things started to take off and people were starting to hear from it. Like, I was hearing from them.
And that doesn't take into account the investment you'd made in training up until.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was about, $8,000 in the hole, let's say, between Animas and the other program that I'd done. But again, like, we need to not fear that, because if we're doing the right things and we're taking the right action, we will get that return. And so I'll relieve everybody. In 2023, I then made $30,000 from coaching specifically. And this year I'm projected to make about $65,000 from coaching. So it's getting there every single time. It is growing and it's building, and that's taken lots of different things. But I think another challenge, just to sort of wrap up this section, would be my constant grappling with taking more risks with myself and with my business. basically what I found is the only way for me to scale my business is to have more revenue streams. So that's looked like having a second one-to-one coaching offering. So I used to only do long-term coaching, but now I do sort of one-off sessions as well as long-term. I then thought, okay, that's got me so far, but I need to do more. So then I launched digital products, and that's gone really well so far this summer. I've had loads of happy customers purchasing standout CV templates and that sort of thing. And then my latest pursuit has been then Career Launch Club, which is my job search community. And again, massive scalability there. But they've all felt really, really scary, to be honest with you. And I've got better as the months and years have gone on to be more at peace with myself of, yeah, this is going to suck. You don't know what you're doing, but you have to do this. Otherwise, you're not going to grow. If you do the same thing, you're going to have the same result, and your spreadsheet's going to look exactly the same in 12 months' time. So I am a fan of sort of radical accountability of, if you want something that only you can change this. And so back yourself and take action. And yeah, some of them will be more successful than others, but taking more action is better than none. So I guess that's a final lesson I would say is just be very action oriented, and you're going to learn way quicker rather than always, planning in your mind or taking 6 months to launch something, because you could waste 6 months if it then isn't successful.
Wow. Blown away. No one's ever been so transparent with us before. So I thank you implicitly for that. And also just to shout out to you, a celebration of clearly the work that you're doing and working so hard has, proved really fruitful. And like you say, there's so many lessons in what you just said. And I kind of just wanted to ask a couple of questions, really. Firstly, you mentioned, there's a case of just trying things, and, as the old Einstein saying goes, do the same thing and expect different results is the definition of kind of insanity. So you've got to keep trying different things. I'm wondering, like, roughly, is there a percentage of all the things you've tried, the kind of the different approaches and the different, maybe the lines that you've tried, like, sales lines and things, what kind of percentage would you say have been successful versus failed?
I'd say surprisingly more successes than what I would think. For the level of anxiety that I held towards the concept of experimentation, probably about 80% of it has come off well. So it's actually a pretty good success rate, but you don't know that until you're on the other side. But I remember really distinctly sort of the biggest failure, I would say, is about 18 months ago. I wanted to launch a group program, and I called it Employ Me Bootcamp, and it was going to be this 12-week thing. And I thought it was going to be like the greatest thing since sliced bread. I even tested it out with my current clients so that I could test out the materials. I did all the modules, I did everything. And then basically nobody wanted it. And that was an amazing, amazing lesson of how, one, I took way too long to trial that out. That needed to be like a 1 week thing of I poll it on my LinkedIn. Literally, that's what I do now. I poll things just so my community can tell me off the bat what they want and what they don't want. So I wasted a lot of time, and I just don't think I did enough other research. I think I had a really dead set mentality of that's what I want to do. This is what I think is going to be right, but I'm not my audience. So, yeah, that's another huge lesson, I would say, whether you're aspiring or even quite seasoned as a business owner, always be thinking about what does your customer want? Like, the customer is king. And that's not to say that you should sacrifice everything that you want. At the end of the day, you've worked hard, it's your business, but it can't be all about what the type of, lifestyle or the way you want to run your business if it comes at a cost of not giving the customers what they really, really want and need from you. So yeah, big fail there, but a big lesson.
I like it. We learn so much from the failures. The successes are great, but I think we learn even more from the failures, and the importance of getting back up again and trying again the next day, and kind of not giving in, as tempting as that can be. I also would, you mentioned sort of serving your community and doing what's right for the customer, but, the sacrifices. And I happen to know that on LinkedIn, you've got over 10,000 followers. And given all what you're doing, how do you not spread yourself too thin with kind of all those different lines and kind of all the different plates you're spinning at the moment? How do you manage to be intentional and also protect yourself? As I know that a lot of coaches, myself included, can struggle with trying to spin so many plates at the time, all at once, that odd plates start to get dropped.
Yeah. and I'm not perfect with this. I'm a very, very detail oriented person. So I very rarely make mistakes. That's a huge fear of mine, actually. I really, really hate making mistakes that are visible to clients, and then it comes at a cost to how they perceive my service. But then equally that can come at a price to me, because I'm not willing to sacrifice on any level of integrity or just quality. I think what has needed to happen is that I had to just then invest in my business again. So I've got now a couple of freelancers that help me with socials, and that has been a really, really positive step in the right direction. Because I think transparently, if I was doing this all by myself, I don't know how, basically. I think as well, again, going back to this sort of radical accountability idea, I think you need to be upfront with yourself about what season are you in with business. So for context, when I first started, I actually lived in Southeast Asia, and any of my fellow Animites would laugh at this, because I would log on at 6 o'clock at night, my time, to start the 9 a.m. modules every weekend. And I would finish coaching at about 2 a.m. And I remember distinctly just how character building it was, of like, if I can coach someone at 1 o'clock in the morning when I'm dead and I'm genuinely actively listening and having a great session, I can do anything in this business. But the season I was in was actually quite chilled out solopreneurship, because I didn't have as many clients and we were living life a little bit, really, really fun digital nomad times. But every month and year that's gone on, I've got more into my grind phase, my hustle phase, and I'm at peace with that, because it's what do you want and what are you willing to do to get it? And I am willing at this moment in time to be more hands-on with my business, make more money. Transparently, I'm going to be 30 in December. I want to be a mum in due course. So that's a really real piece to this, isn't it? When you're self-employed, the statutory maternity pay isn't great. So you have to really plan ahead and think, right, okay, if I want these things to happen, I have to make X amount. And then working backwards from that, kind of similar to what I said with the clients, of like, what's the dream outcome? And then let's work backwards from that and think, right, okay, so in order for that to be true and that to happen, what needs to happen next? It can be a little bit scary, but it's also very empowering, because I truly feel that there's no number in this world that isn't possible in terms of making money, or the number of clients you want to have, or the impact that you want to have. It isn't all about money. It can be about anything big that you want to accomplish. So just figure out what it is and come up with an action plan to underpin it. And worst case scenario, you don't hit it, but you get way further than you ever would have been before. So that's always been my mentality. I mean, like this year, I remember actually really distinctly my stepdad saying to me, because I was really, really thrilled last year that I'd made about 45 grand. So like 30 grand from coaching and then 15 grand from the other business that I had as a tutor. And I remember him turning around to me at Christmas and saying, that's awesome. I think next year you should try and make 100 grand. Like, I think once you hit 100 grand, like, good, you need to give context. I mean, he's very working class. He's done very well for himself. So there's a whole backdrop as to why he might believe that. But I remember thinking, oh my God, don't put pressure on me to make 100 grand. Like, that's wild. But then I thought about it again, and I was like, actually, why was I so off put by that number? Why is that not possible for me? So I started to think about it more of just as a thought experiment. If I had to make 100 grand, what would I need to change? And that came the thought process of, well, yeah, probably a scalable community where people pay really low cost, but I just have loads of people. Great for them, great for me. Probably looking a little bit more at my one-to-one pricing. And I think I was undercharging, and I need to be a little bit braver and just put up a little bit more. So all those kind of things needed to happen. And yeah, I'm not on target to make 100 grand, but I'm on target to make 65 grand. And I think that's more than what I even would have predicted for myself last year. So yeah, hopefully a huge lesson in just being brave and bold and just going for things.
Wow. There's so much. I think we really have taken the show into space this week, Farah. Honestly, there's so much you said in there I'd love to ask you about. And I think in the limited time remaining, I just wanted to say, I wanted to first ask very quickly, how does one go about pricing like one-to-one coaching when your own demographic is by definition grads who possibly haven't nailed that grad job yet, and are maybe working at Tesco on the checkouts and still, very deep into that student loan? How do you make it like affordable for them and kind of morally and ethically right and true, but at the same time being profitable for you and charging, not undervaluing yourself. And I also wanted to ask off the back of that, to what degree do you believe people have like a figure in mind that they think they're worth and they work kind of up to that figure, but then they don't push themselves any further because they think, well, that's more or less what I'm worth? I wonder if
Yeah,
that come up for you in your kind of
literally right
that
now.
45 versus 100
Yeah,
analogy.
this is literally me right now because I haven't actually changed my pricing all year, but my social proof has changed and my skills have changed. So I am actually probably technically undercharging myself again. Um, it's absolutely a process. I'm actually very against people just charging what they're worth because I just think that's a very unanchored concept. I mean, everybody has intrinsic worth. I don't want to take that away from anyone, but your value is relative to the market and how big of a problem you can solve to your target audience. And of course, it's relative to their buying power and their age and all that kind of stuff. So when I first started, it was £150 a month. So the whole package was 450. And as time went on, I just got a little bit braver. I just upped it to 175, 195, 245, and now it's 295 for 3 months minimum. That's like the most sort of comprehensive package that I do, the Career Accelerator. But what I've also then done is ethically, I've always wanted there to be something that people could benefit from. So I go as low as free masterclasses every single month. So technically, if people are savvy, they could come along to every single one of my masterclasses for free and get an amazing job, like 30K plus job. And they've not spent a single dime. They've just spent their time with me. But then as it goes up, we've now got, Career Launch Club, where it's just under £39 a month. And it's the group mentality, it's the community, it's some more support. And then we start to go up with one-to-one services. So yeah, I found that really important that, I want there to be something for everyone where there is that sort of relative price point. But the other thing I do come back to is, again, it comes back to the problem that you're solving. The more social proof I got about how powerful it was to work with people when they were getting hired, they were getting 30, 40, 50K jobs. You start to then do the return on investment and you're thinking, hang on a second, they spent 800 quid with me and in return got a 50K starting salary at 22 years old. So it is that thing of, I try to, without sort of over projecting my story onto other people, I do like to encourage people to back themselves and invest in some way, because like I said earlier, you do need skin in the game, I feel. And if you do everything for free, you don't have the accountability. You're not bought into changing. So I think money does matter, but equally, I'm not someone here charging £10,000 an hour for a coaching session. Because I just, for me, for my target audience, I don't think that's right. I'm not saying it's not right for others, but I actually think I'm quite affordable for what I end up giving people.
Thank you for sharing. I really, really liked your answer. And there's such a school of thought that if you give something away for free, you devalue it by the nature of giving it away for free. It could be the most valuable product in the world, but when you give coaching away, for example, like you say, the process requires that the coachee is invested in themselves and that they hold themselves accountable. And the process just falls apart when there's no exchange there of money. But then
there needs to
equally,
be like some level of, don't take this the wrong way, but some level of pain. It needs to feel a little bit like, oh wow, I'm actually doing this. Like, wow, okay. And that could be a different price point for so many people, but we need to find, and that's always what I'm playing around with. Like, I mean, I am at that point of thinking, right, okay, I probably do need to put my price up again, but it's that threshold of genuine affordability with pain, a little bit of pain, versus just outpricing the market. And annoyingly, you don't know that until you experiment and you just look at the data in retrospect. Pricing is a really, really hard one to survey people, because I've even tried this with my ex-clients, and interestingly, they're all ex-clients where some of them paid £150, some of them paid £300 technically. So like sometimes double the price. And interestingly, what they give back in the survey, there's not really a correlation. So what I've figured out is that you just need to set a price, and when things are going well and you have a ton of leads, more leads than what you can do with, perhaps consider putting up your price a little bit and just then see how it goes.
thank you for sharing. And moving sort of slightly off the topic of pricing, as we could stay on it all night. I spoke to someone last week who they have a green bottle pricing structure, and they have low, medium, and high prices, and then they invite the client to choose which category they're in. And so there's infinite different ways of doing it, but again, depending on who your niche is, and depending on how you prefer to work.
100%. And also just the huge respect for that person. It's not something that I can afford to do. And I think that's a really important part as coaches to be at peace with, because we will all have this for different reasons. But I'm from a very working class background, and it's not the easiest thing in the world for me to fork out like $5,000 for a coaching accreditation, another $2,000 for other support, like the freelancer work that I risk giving away all the time. So like this means a lot to me to do these things. And it's absolutely okay for me not to be a non-profit. I need to be a for-profit business, because when I am empowered with my own finances, I can give back more in the future. And I think a lot of Gen Z, early millennials do struggle with this, because we're very sort of morally informed. And I've had real roller coasters with this, not just in business, but so many areas of my life. And it's really, really challenging. But I think knowing that there's a time and place where you can be more generous, it's absolutely okay to build up your wealth, build up your value in the market, so that later you're actually in a financial position where you can do things pro bono or have scholarships or have this tiered approach. But at the moment I have to hustle, and everything has its time and place. Everything has its season. Like I said, there'll be a season, I'm sure. I very much in the future, I see myself being self-employed for the rest of my life. And I would really, really love like a latter season in my 40s, maybe in my 50s, doing huge things in business where I can give a lot of this stuff away and just, be the very, very ethical business owner. Not to say that being profitable is not ethical, but being even more generous.
Yeah, I like what you're saying, and there's definitely something to be said about the bigger your profile and the bigger your reputation translates to the bigger impact that you can have in the world, and the more people that you can reach with your work.
And the more, it's absolutely the more impact potentially that you can have. Because if we go back earlier to this concept of people do need to be bought in, am I robbing people of bigger impacts in their lives by undercharging them? Like, it's a very fascinating concept of, if I gave everything away for free in 2025, would people do so well? I'm not sure. I have a suspicion that no, because I would just attract a different person potentially, and motivations might be different, and a whole host of things that maybe we don't even see until we realize it. But there's merit in charging people appropriately for you, for them, for the whole ecosystem, and just watching that play out, I think is really fascinating. I actually think a lot of clients, I've never asked this question, but it's sort of inferred in the testimonies that they give, is that they're really proud of the fact that they backed themselves. The investment proves that they believed in themselves enough to take the risk, and that has just set them up for so many more things. So I wouldn't want to rob anyone of that opportunity to prove to themselves how valuable they are and how far they're willing to go to back themselves for change.
Thank you for sharing. Another different way to look at it. Why paying for coaching is absolutely necessary and really beneficial, as you've taken a huge first leap in terms of your own personal progress when you sign on the dotted line and make that investment, because it's an investment in yourself.
Yeah.
I love that. I wondered if, as we sort of draw our interview for today to a close, I wondered, as you sit there with the night sky behind you, what it was like taking the Animas course, through the night.
Yeah, literally. It was really, really fun. I really enjoyed it. I loved about Animas how varied the modules were. And in particular, I loved transactional analysis. I still to this day talk about that with certain clients, especially if they're like exploring certain relationship dynamics and that sort of thing. And really, really just helped me as an individual. I love the community vibe. I'm still friendly even years later with people that were in my cohort. I know it's a bit smaller these days, but we had about 40 of us. And yeah, it was really, really a wholesome experience. And I just learned so much about myself. I was one of those in the modules where I'd always volunteer to be coached by the lecturers because I loved experiencing their coaching. Yeah, and I got loads from those sessions. But even just as a coach, looking back now, I think back to some of those moments sometimes and think, yeah, okay, that's what it feels like to be given silence and that, you know, or that style of question. So yeah, I couldn't fault it. It was really a wonderful experience.
Oh, so glad to hear that. So glad to hear that. And if there's someone, you know, that's listening to you and really interested in finding out more about the work you're doing and maybe getting involved, where can we find you and how can we get in touch?
Yeah, of course. So my email is farah@thegradcoach.co.uk, but I'm also on LinkedIn. So you can literally type in Farah Morgan, the grad coach, and I'll be there. They're the main two places to find me, from which you'll gather all other bits and pieces. But yeah, I'd love to hear from anyone. If you found that, thank you in advance for getting this far, if you have with the recording. And I just wish all of you who are watching this back just every success with your coaching business. I love to see other coaches succeed, because it's an amazing industry to be a part of, and it is viable as a business offering as well. Just needs a little bit of tweaking, a little bit of strategy, but I think we need more coaches being able to go full time if that's what they want to do. You know, if you are an aspiring, you know, solopreneur or business owner where you want to take this full time and dedicate your working life to it, it is possible. So I'm excited to see more of you pop up on LinkedIn, most likely. I'd recommend it as a platform to get started with.
Well, thank you so much for sort of all of your wisdom and advice that you've imparted to us today, and also for being so transparent. And what I will say is that Farah mentioned earlier having a great attention to detail. Can confirm, as someone who's exchanged a lot of correspondence with her, her attention to detail is incredible, and you are incredibly proactive, already anticipating what I'm going to ask 3 emails before I even ask it. So shout out to your attention to detail there. It's been a pleasure, and I do hope we are able to feature you on the channel again.
Likewise. Thank you so much for today, David.